How are you?
Not too bad, cheers.
Is it a holiday there, or
Say again, sorry.
is it a holiday there?
Yes, it's Easter Monday or whatever, so it's Bank Holiday Monday.
Already. Okay. You have a chance to then look at Seisan. I think you're going to work on some of the concepts.
I've been just working the first half of the kata pattern to try and get it a bit smoother and work. The bit that I'm finding difficult is the hand slip. Sort of think I'm getting in the right direction, but I'm not overly sure, to be honest.
Oh, show me then.
Would sideways be better for that bit?
Yeah, try sideways first, and we'll take a look.
I mean, where else would a hairbrush be? You know.
Yeah, I would say, Paul. Yeah, I mean this part. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 is all you need to do, unless you want to practice more. So no, I'm there. It's like what? That's after I hit left hand coming up is 1. Because sometimes it doesn't look like 1, and then 1 starts there. 1, 2, 3, and I would say when you do this part, rather than your forearms doing, I mean, rather than the forearms sort of going up, it's that rotation. I mean, it's the same rotation we do as we come back in Seisan. And actually, some lineages do pull all the way back when they do this movement. I know you've seen it. Some of them will go boom, and they'll pull it back and then push it out. But in the lineage we do, we're just going to go boom, and back in again. So right now we've got a little bit of a changing of the angle. I recommend just rotate. It's literally like someone put a string on my elbow, attached to my rib, goes all the way through here. Someone pulled it back, and it comes in that way. It's kind of that feeling. So we get that rotation. That's it.
So when I finish here, my hands are obviously in separate positions. They're not equaled out.
Right.
So would this hand, this top hand?
I can see that. So essentially, like they're separated by height, but my elbows are in the same position. It's not like my elbows are a different position, so I just snap the elbows in, and I'll come back to that position. That's it.
Okay.
I think, Paul, like, if we try, always we try to break movements down. So we can work on the individual parts of any type of movement. I think, like, for example, I don't know, if I was going to do a front kick, rather than just say, okay, guys, here we go, let's just see the front kick, we might say, I don't know, lift the knee, flex the foot, or however you do it, extend it. But then when we kick, it's just like, bam, we just do it. So we break it down. So So what I would say is, and using that same example, when you teach a front kick, some people don't have the strength in the hip flexors or abdominals yet, and they can't even lift the knee up. They sort of like this, and they're like, and they can't, they don't have the strength yet. So you build the strength, you build the skill.
Okay.
So that if you know what to work on, you can build the skill. So a front kick can improve, quite a lot from when someone can't do it to when they become proficient at it. But you have to build the skill, and the more thoughtful we are about building the skill, and then the faster and more efficient. Well, we'll be able to build it faster, but it will also be a better skill than if we don't know the components. So one of the parts of this is that, which isn't a natural thing that people can do, is getting the forearm to rotate in and out in an explosive way.
Okay.
Because we don't often practice that really quick movement. Well, ironically, we sort of do it when we punch, but in a basic punch, we do get that position. But essentially, it's quite difficult for people to do. So we have to build the skill, and that's just walking around the house trying to rotate the forearm,
okay,
and then back the other way too, so that I can break it down individually, and I can do it together. Then the other part of that is the faster it comes in, the faster it snaps back, which means the faster I'll be able to start going forward, because my body wants to do essentially match the hand movement. Okay. So I definitely recommend, it's like, okay, you're sitting there, you got a couple of minutes, and you just practice that, trying to get the forearm to rotate.
Okay.
And as I do that, essentially I'm sort of doing that, assuming a Seisan position really quickly.
Okay.
But because of the way I do it, I don't necessarily need to come all the way in. So I'll go and then straight forward again. Okay. That is a skill that we got to develop, because it's not just there. I know that sounds like we're stating the obvious, but sometimes it isn't obvious, because you'll hear people say, "Oh, we can't do that." Well, because it takes practice. But we have to know what to practice, how to practice it. So one of the things about this movement is that, really dynamic, explosive rotation. And then as I do that, I start to feel it from, and then up, so the whole body's working together, The leg comes up, the abdominal engages, the forearms rotate, the elbows come in. It's all based on Seisan.
Right.
Okay. It's the same feeling, right? In Seisan, you just break it down very slowly, which assists. It's interesting because we had a Uechi Uchideshi here. I think you might have seen him. He's a high-ranking guy, been training a long time. But the way they do Seisan is a little bit different, because they tend not to slow it down.
Okay.
And so it's quite interesting. So I was working with him on lots of different things, but one of the ones was Seisan too. And even though the sequence is different, the fundamental positions are very similar.
Okay.
But what I did find is, because they don't do it slowly, some of the things that we may teach got lost. And so some of the structural positions haven't been reinforced. Which is kind of interesting, right? It's kind of the same idea as Tai Chi. It's done very slowly, not because you're supposed to, not because you're supposed to move slowly, but because of the way it helps you basically perfect every single position as you're going through it, and understand it and feel it. So it's not from here to here. You feel, you'll feel every part of the movement. Wherever you stop along the line of the movement, you're feeling that, how you get to that.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think breaking it down, relating to Seisan is important.
Okay.
What other parts
To be honest, we got all the way up to it was foot down turn. That's where I finished at the end of last week's class. So instead of doing the full kata this week, I've stopped there every time that I've done it, and I've just not considered this week those other, you know, the other direction of the kata.
Yeah. Okay, well, this kata is interesting because it shows movements. It does basically through the 3 punches.
Okay.
So essentially, essentially their movements which go, if I was to do it, and then it sort of repeats that, but in a disguised way. We got that kind of thing, and then it repeats it in another disguised way. And then we've got these 3 movements which will come in this way. But in between all those things, you have the technique, right? I mean, this forms the frame and the timing and the sort of energy generation, power generation principles, which are different in different parts of the kata. But then between each of the fundamental movements, you have the techniques, and they're all very similar in the sense that I finished all my 3 fundamentals, and then we've got this. And that's kind of the first technique really that's shown.
Okay.
And then you go again, don't you? And then it's like the basic technique, and then the basic fundamental movement, and then you've got you got the next technique.
Okay.
It's very similar to the first technique.
Okay.
So I think recognizing that is quite important, and that's why I think we can say that Seisan kata is quite helpful understanding Sanchin, and Sanchin's helpful understanding Seisan, and then if we can understand Sanchin within Seisan, we can understand it with movements,
Okay.
positions which aren't quite similar.
Okay.
Seisan kata. Do you want to look at the next part then? So presumably you got up to here right before we do that.
No, we if I do the kata the opposite way to the room, the last move that we did last week was hit down.
All right. So we didn't do that.
No, we didn't go on to that bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that. I mean, the basic idea is that one hand is scooping up, so it's basically just the middle block, but starting low.
Okay.
And then it focuses in. So we basically do that in Seisan. It's no different, except for the positioning. But essentially, I scoop it up and then turn over. So again, we got this. It's that rotation of the forearm again.
Okay.
So it's rotate here, turn. So once it scoops up to there, it basically just does get but I mean, this is the same as Seisan. It's the same as in side bar, especially the second one. Something exactly the same.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about that move?
Not so much the move. The name of it is an interesting one because again, one of the things I've been pretty bad at is keeping the names that I was taught them originally. And this what I call block turn pull, this movement, I knew it as kakiuke. And I know a lot of people call that kakiuke. I was taught it as, I think it's hikiuke. So I was like, does it because in terms of my club, the first time this is coming up is now that they're learning Seonchin. Really, I should have looked at it in Cypher, but I didn't because I just opened from that position. But when we get here at the moment, I'm telling to kakiuke and pull. Do you think it makes that much difference? Does the naming of it mean something different to the technique in how I was originally taught it.
Kake just means to, I mean, literally something like hook.
Hmm.
So, so the reason this is called kakyuke is because you can, you can feel like you're hooking into something. I mean, you could probably call that kakyuke too, but just to distinguish it. And but hikyuke suggests not only hooking but pulling, like the hikite. It's the same word. The hikyuke just means pulling. So I think it's just a matter of deciding what you want to say. Like for this one, where you come up, you could call it just chudanoke, but usually what we call it is skuyuke, because it feels like you're scooping up. Skui just means to scoop up. So really, there's a couple of components to that. It's skuyuke, kakyuke, you could say kakyuke if you want, and then but if you pull it, you're going to call it hikyuke. It's just like you could say in English, you could call it lots of different things. Okay, guys, we're going to do the hook block. Actually, no, let's call it the pull block. Or we're going to hook then pull. I think it's sometimes we tend to think these are official names. Well, they become standardized within different teachers and organizations and styles. But saying it's meant to be descriptive. So I would say I would definitely call this skuyuke. To that, and that could be kake or sayuke, means to press, which kind of also it feels like you're pressing. But anyway, what we usually say, like we were teaching, we just try and simplify it. Skuyuke, gerambarai, skuyuke, gerambarai. I don't know if that helps, but the kake, like we usually just say hikyuke with this. However, there's nothing wrong with saying kakyuke. I mean, it's basically the same thing, but the meaning of the words is different. So one is kake is hook, and hiki is pull or hiku. That helps. Yeah. I think because we're learning together, that's a good thing if you want to know how we standardize it. But ultimately, it's just what you decide in your club. And then the biggest thing with using Japanese is mispronunciation of it. So that's the only thing, is I would try to be correct about it.
Because I do find, say, the place that I go on a Monday night, he calls some of the blocks different things than I do. So one of the things is I've got I'm all right at the skill of retranslating everything to bring it back to a source, if that makes sense. So say, he would use kakyuke for that, and I would use hikyuke. So I'm able to, if he says it, I just know it's
right
hiki to me, and then But it's it's just trying to work out if I want to go down the line of annoying my students, of changing all the names to fall into a specific line, especially if there is a GKC global line of this is what this means at this point.
Maybe we need to put out a terminology sheet, so you can have something at least to go by. All right, I'll think about that. But ultimately it's descriptive. I remember when I real briefly I was in Japan when I was training there, living there. Most of all the lessons were from Higaonna Sensei personally, but every now and again, if he wasn't there, someone else might take the class. One time there was a foreigner, as opposed to like Japanese or Okinawan guy. American guy who spoke better Japanese than a lot of Japanese. University educated in Japan. His Japanese was extremely good, and when he taught the class, ironically, he didn't use any Japanese, because to him it's like, well, Japanese is just a language. Why when I'm teaching a bunch of foreigners am I going to use Japanese? To him it's just let's just speak in English. So because he could do both fluently, so that was quite interesting too, wasn't it? But I think mean, we use Japanese terminology. We like to use it, and we think it creates an interest in people. And we've had students who've gone on to study Japanese just because they learned each san when they were 5 or something. You know, so I think it's a lot of benefit to it. All right, Paul, we're gonna have to go.
I've got a very quick question, if it's okay. If it's okay. One of my students also trains Shotokan, has done for a lot longer than he's been with us. Very traditional style of Shotokan as well. They are bringing in Seonchin as like a side thing, because they believe it comes from Kanazawa. Now my question to you is, because obviously you took some of the pictures of Higono and Kanazawa together. Did the Seonchin of Kanazawa come from Higono Sensei because they was training together, or is it just
I think he learned it somewhere else. I've seen him do it. It's interesting. I'll tell you a little story about that, which is I still remember to this day because it's quite interesting. So I'm walking with them, Higono and Kanazawa senseis. I haven't met Kanazawa sensei before, and so they're chatting away, and so we basically had to walk 5 minutes to this nice bay park area, and so they're chatting away, and Kanazawa sensei was asking about me a little bit, just being polite. And so Higono sensei was saying, yeah, it's my student, blah blah blah. So we had a little sort of brief introduction, and then so when the photos were taken, they were actually professional photos. There's professional versions of them taken by Masters Mag. I can't remember, it was Masters Magazine or something. So I was with a nice camera, but taking photos on the side. But I'm standing next to Kanazawa sensei, and Higono sensei is doing all these like Seisan and Seipai, and Kanazawa sensei in Japanese turns around to me. He goes, Goju postures are so interesting. Shotokan, they're just so boring. That's it, literally. I mean, I don't know if he's just being polite, but I was like really taken aback, because this is one of the top Shotokan teachers in the world. He just turns around and offhandedly says that. I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't learn from Higono sensei. You can see his Seinshin, and I think they don't even call it Seinshin. They call it the Seinshin or something. But you can see it on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. And
I watched it, and it's not identical to ours, but it was a lot closer than I was expecting it to be, which sort of the reason why I thought, well, hang on a minute, did he get it from a common source to me? And that's why I was, wondering again as well, with my student John asking specifically about that kata, and
Yeah, well, I again, I don't know for sure, if I'm honest, but the other thing is that Higono sensei and Kanazawa, Fujimoto, and one other, I can't remember his name. Back in the 1960s, they were all in Tokyo, so they all used to get together, just four of them, and train together. And probably, I know they did a lot of kumite, that type of thing, but they probably also looked at kata. So, yeah, who knows? Probably a bunch of different influences. I think. All right. Yeah, but yeah, that's good. You have students from other styles training with you.
Is actually wanting me to, if those guys take on this Seonchin, is to do to come over, or them come over to us, and maybe do some 2-person work with them, around what these can be, because with them being a very traditional school, they don't look at bunkai in the same way that I do. So it's nice to hear that they're quite open to come and try something completely different, which I think is, I'd be really, really interested to get, to get together. Especially the head instructor, I think he's 76 or 77, and he's been around the game for a long time, and he's interested in coming to see this, this little 35-year-old, that's down the road from him. I just thought that was quite cool.
That's great, Paul. Yeah, well done. Your name's getting out there. It's really good. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. They'll love it. I know, as you know, the Shotokan are very, very good at some things, but most the traditional ones haven't explored past this range. They're all out here somewhere. So that'll be great. Good for you. Well done.
Thank you, Sensei.
All right, well, you take care.